Have you ever heard two individuals talk past one another? Perhaps they're using the same words, but they mean very different things. For instance, a gentleman might be sharing about how the ears are just about ready, where another person says he needs to clean out his ears because he's not understanding what they're talking about. Well, maybe one gentleman is speaking about ears of corn and the other are speaking about ears on his head. Ears has different meanings or different ways to be used, and we can determine that meaning by context. Well, another wrinkle on that is when a word is misdefined, when a definition is applied to a word that maybe is more modern but not accurate to what was originally intended. Today we're going to look at a word, faith. You may have heard people quote Samuel Clemens or something like it, but Samuel Clemens is quoted as saying, faith is believing what you know ain't so. Dawkins quotes similar, Ayn Rand quoted similar in the past. Another contemporary person that quotes this, or a similar idea, is Peter Boghossian, who actually trains people to go out and engage specifically with individuals that are Christian, because they're specifically non-theists, and ask them where they get their beliefs from and how they're grounded and things like that, and can expose that, well, if it's blind faith, there's nothing to stand on. So there's this idea of blind faith out there today. You jump, you go out into the dark, and there's no knowledge that's going on. We even have to correct that in Christian circles some days, or sometimes. Now, this might be a big challenge. It makes Christians look dumb to others. Oh, you just have blind faith, you don't look at facts at all. But is that actually what the Bible means when it uses the word faith? Is that what we mean or should mean when we use the word faith in a biblical context? Now everybody looks to Hebrews 11, so why don't we look there? And I just find this interesting. Now I'm using the NASB, verse 11. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, for by it the men of old gained renown. So that's the Hall of Faith. It talks about individuals who have expressed faith and they've done action on this. They have a trust, in their God, and this is recognizing that. These are examples for us. But everyone focuses on this things unseen. But it doesn't mean that we have blind faith just because we can't necessarily see a substance called faith. We can't see the wind, as very famously pointed out, and yet we believe it exists, right? Just because you can't see the actual item doesn't mean you can't see effects. We can't see immaterial things, and yet we as Christians believe in an immaterial thing called the soul. Okay? We're looking at effects. Now it clues us into something here in verse 2, for by it the men of old gained renown, or approval. So we're going to turn back to the Old Testament, to 1 Samuel for just a second, and I want to share something with you about this man of the faith, a man after God's own heart named David, and what he did with this giant. And we can all remember the story, hopefully. This is one of the things we usually hear very young and get repeated to us very often. There was this giant cursing the people of Israel, cursing their God. He was this Philistine, and everybody was shaking in their boots. And then David showed up and was willing to tackle him. Now, of course, there's more to that story. David was back home as a shepherd. He was sent to the front lines to just deliver supplies to his family members. But we see here when he latches on and he's willing to take on the giant, what does he say? He says, your servant was tending his father's sheep when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock. I went out after him and attacked him and rescued it from his mouth. And when he rose up against me, I seized him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies of the living God. And that was verse 36 in 1 Samuel 17. He had some experience to go on, okay? He wasn't just trusting blindly in God. What he did was, God saw me through the bear. He saw me through the lion. God will see me through this giant. Okay? Now for him, it was experience. For John, it was When he wrote his gospel, he wrote in verse 31 of chapter 20, he said, I wrote this so that you might believe. Okay? He had seen things in person, but wrote down with eyewitnesses, with reports, with geography that matches. We can test those things. We can look into those things. It's part of what we do at Ratio Christi. For us today, it very often is the going and digging into the evidence that what we have written in the Bible is what was intended and has been accurately passed down and matches. Okay? It matches what happened. Eyewitnesses contributed to it. Okay? We have reasons to believe it's real. So we have this evidence. And faith really should be, I submit to you, a trust based on evidence. Whether it be that experience, like David had. Now, there it's important to know that there may be a difference in knowing something based on experience rather than showing something based on experience. Or the things we go over in apologetics. They allow us to know more about our faith and more concretely affirm it. But it's not a blind faith. It's a trust based on the evidence that we have gathered for it. So when we're having a conversation with somebody else who wants to say blind faith, that's not a concept found in here. And it's not the kind of concept of faith that we're teaching. No, in fact, Ratio Christi says blind faith is lame. And I really do agree. It's not going to have the power to stand up to hostile critics in the college, in the world, or even one's own self-critiques as we encounter and experience the world around us. We got to have a solid foundation, not that castle full of sand. We got to have reasons and evidence. And then when we come up against something, time and time again, you know what? I don't have an answer for that question, but I don't think it's going to defeat my faith, because every time I've had a dilemma like this, I've gone, I've searched, I've looked for the correct answer, not just the one I wanted to hear, and guess what? Every time, God has come out on top.